Holy moly.
I did a video 2 years ago about the differences between bent leg and straight leg. And in that video, I had 2 comments that talked about not knowing that marching technique was this technical, or that they didn't receive this level of education on the fundamentals of movement at their programs. And that video wasn't even about what makes good technique. It was just about the technique. And it made me realize that there is a fundamental misunderstanding with some like marching techs, educators, whatever you want to call them, in the way that they teach straight leg technique specifically, because this is where I'm going to dig into. And I wanted to use this video to break down some of the things that I, as a staff member at corps, marching bands, wherever, the things that I look for and the things that I teach my students, and like really the theory behind the mechanics of movement when it comes to marching technique. All you need to teach what I'm about to teach is a whiteboard and a shoe. But feel free to put this in front of your students, send this to other staff members that you work with or that work for you. There's at least going to be something for everybody in this video. And if you knew all of this already, congratulations, why aren't you teaching? The first thing I want to talk about is the parts of the foot. So we have the toes, which is the front part of this. We have the balls of the feet, which is right here. And then we have the arch. We all know that. And we have the heel. The reason that I want to talk about this is because when I educate my students, I don't separate the toes and the ball of the foot, because I think about it as one thing. It's just the platform. This is all one thing to me. And the reason that I unify it when I teach is because in technique, the platform is the platform. There is never a point where, in my opinion, you should be breaking the toes from the ball of the foot because you want it to stay the same because of the way that we flex when we move forward, backward, sideways. Like this always stays the same because before it gets to the point where it breaks, we're flexing the foot and taking it off the ground. For example, in forward technique, you've pushed off of the platform, and in order to bring that forward, you don't then roll up this all the way and then move it forward, because then you're going to get a lot of knee bend, because the knee is only... The knee can only move so much, and if you're trying to push the heel really high up, it forces that knee to break. So before we get to that point, we want to flex the foot slightly off the ground and then move it forward. When we move backward, it's really the same concept. You push with the platform of the foot, the platform, not the ball, not the toes. The platform of the foot is pushed off the ground, and in order to then move that leg backward to take your next step, we flex the foot. The whole platform comes off of the ground, and then we move it back, and then we place it on the platform. That's backwards technique. If you teach it any other way, that's fine, but I'm going to get into the reasons why there's a very basic level of straight leg technique and not a whole lot of variation on it, whereas we see a lot of variation in bent leg. The next thing that I want to talk about is what I like to call table theory. This is a theory that I made up myself. I don't think I've ever seen it talked about in this way, and there are similar things. I'm going to talk about that, but it's usually just about posture. So this is the whiteboard, I guess, for me. The way that a lot of educators talk about posture is the hips are like a bowl or a teacup, if you want to talk about that. And we want, if this was filled with water, we want it to not tip over one way or the other when we're standing straight up. And that's correct, right? We want the hips to be flat. That's how you're going to keep your upper body correct, and you're not going to like curve out the back this way or have posture and then hunch over this way. Because like, when you're hunched over this way, that's from that little teacup being tilted back. And then you kind of hunch over to counterbalance that. And then the other thing is from tilting forward, and then you have your back in this like weird curved posture. For me, table theory is more focusing on the movement rather than just the posture. But table theory is my theory that when we teach technique, ignore the upper body for a second. That's posture, right? We're teaching marching technique. Posture is separated from that. Marching technique is just the legs. It's just the legs. And we're going to get into the upper body, but that's like only for slides. It's just the legs. So, you're standing straight up. This should be a table. Very, very flat, right? It's kind of the same as the teacup, right? But when we move, we want this to stay flat. And if we're pulling from one end, it causes some things to happen. So if we're talking about leading with the foot, like kicking out, right? You might be fine if you're taking a small step to just kind of like kick the leg out and keep that straight. But when we get into the bigger steps and you're like really reaching for this, we start rotating this back. The other thing that I see a lot that's not correct is that educators will talking about lifting the heel. And your leg is only so long, right? So if you're lifting your heel way too much, your leg can't shrink down and compress here in order to get like your foot on the ground. Your foot is then going to be like here, and then when you actually move down, it's going to fall. And just because every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction, there's going to be reverberations that are going back up into your body, into your upper body, and that's going to cause feet in the sound. So table theory is just saying that when you move forward, that table is staying completely flat. Notice how this heel's like, it's maybe really an inch off the ground. The toes, everybody asks for something different. The toe height is not something that needs to happen in order to have good technique. It's more of something that just kind of looks good. But good technique is what causes feet to not be in the sound and for you to move smoothly across a field. That's my idea of good technique. There's cleanliness, and cleanliness is how we look, but good technique is how we move. And there's a separation there, that educators unify cleanliness with good technique, but they're not one and the same. Good technique is how we move. Good cleanliness is how we look unified, right? If all that matters to you as an educator, a band director, a visual caption head, is that the members are moving and they can sound well while they move, toe height doesn't matter. As long as it's off the ground, toe height does not matter. But the table is stayed the same. There's 50-50 weight distribution. And then when we move, if this is your front foot, it's rolling down, and then your heel is flexed. We already talked about lifting the platform off the ground with the flex, is moving across and then going and doing the same thing, moving down, rolling, flexing, moving forward, hitting with the heel, rolling down, flexing, moving forward. That's what we look for. And by having that 50-50 weight distribution in the feet, we're going to make sure that the table stays flat. For things that we want to avoid in straight leg, we already talked about it, but the first one was lifting the heel up too much. And that is from educators not understanding the fundamentals of movement. They know inherently that when you move forward, the heel comes up off the ground. So what they teach is make sure your heel's coming off of the ground when you move forward. But that's not what they should be teaching. What they should be teaching is make sure we're pushing off the platform, because when we put the weight into the platform and move forward, our leg is going to go like this, right? This is my leg in the shoe. If I did not push off that platform, what I was doing was sticking my foot out and just like having it like this, right? Let me go back here. By digging with your platform, like if this is the platform, this is pushing to the ground, your leg is going to go like this. Your leg, again, is only so long. It's going to pull the heel up off of the ground with it. If we push the heel up off of the ground, either the knee is going to break because, again, your leg is only so long and you're trying to teach your members to put the heel up off the ground and they're over-exaggerating it, or the leg is going to stay straight and the other leg is going to not be all the way to the ground. Like if this was the first step, you had your member bring their heel up too far off of the ground, and then the other leg could not reach the ground because you moved your whole upper body upward. The last one was kicking. We kind of already talked about it. That's by keeping your weight here and just sticking this foot out there. We're going to lean back. Let's get into backwards marching. I think this is where the most amount of misinterpretations of technique happen. And I think it's from a few issues, but I want to talk about the main one that I think I see the most. Sometimes in backward, we know that the heel doesn't touch the ground because it causes members to roll the foot and then lift the toe up as they march backwards. So instead of marching like this, step, 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 they're rolling the heel to the ground, and then they're going like this. And then they start leaning backward. We don't want that, right? So what some educators do, and I have seen this, I've seen educators do this, is they tell the members to be on the tippy toes. And then we start breaking the feet, right? And this either causes the issue of members rolling the foot to become even worse, or the members are moving like this. And when you are extending the foot like that, it causes members to stiffen the foot in like this position, if this is the leg, right, when they're moving backward. Like, this is such a big, like, I'm really overdoing like what is happening in the feet, but this is what you look like. So much energy is going into this ankle, which is then going into here because we're trying to keep our legs straight. And this is being compounded by this happening on both feet, that all of this energy is going into your upper body, and it's causing feet to be in the sound. To limit that, these educators then go, we don't want you picking up the foot off of the ground, because when we place it down, you're going to cause like shock waves in your body again. So then they have their members drag their feet straight back. And instead of marching what I would consider good technique, where like if this is the ground and you're marching backward, you're pushing off, slightly flexing, moving back, placing that on the ground, pushing off, slightly flexing. They're causing their members to go like this, and just drag along the ground. We don't want to see that, because by dragging, again, every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction. There's going to be a pushback, friction moving forward. It's going to be harder for your members to stay in time. It's going to be harder for your members to make the proper step sizes because there's friction. If you have your members have their foot just slightly off the ground, like let's say this is the ground, and we look like this as we march backwards, rather than this as we march backwards, your members are going to have a lot easier time picking up the foot off of the ground than this, right? Because we're moving the foot from here to here rather than from here to here. I think that this is a really good interpretation of what is wrong with certain techniques that educators are teaching and that members are marching. There's one last thing that I want to talk about as it comes to technique and how educators can misunderstand how to teach the technique, and that is in slides. Let's say this is your audience. The goal is to have your members move at a 50 or 90 degree slide, right? They're either moving this way or this way, maybe forward, maybe backward. It really doesn't matter for this example. But this is the biggest slide that you're ever going to get, 50 degrees, or 90 degrees. Educators will teach, let's say that your members are moving in a forward slide this way. They want the hips, they will say the hips. I want your hips to be flat to front. That is just not possible, right? If this is one foot and this is the other foot, and these are your hips right here, your hips are going to be moving this way in a normal forward march. So trying to move the hips this way is going to, you would have to physically twist the legs like around each other in order to get your hips to do that. That's just not possible. What really should be happening here is, instead of getting your hips flat to front, we want the upper body to be flat to front. And I think the point in the upper body in a 90 degree slide that can actually be flat to front is like the belly button. So I think about it more of like, I want to put a laser in your belly button. And when you're marching at a 90 degree slide, if you were right on the 50, I want that laser to be pointing directly forward. I'm going to use a red for here, right? In the belly button, not the hips. So what I like to teach my students, let's say that green is your hips, right? Black is the direction that your feet are moving in. If you were moving this way, your hips want to be here, right? Your hips want to be here, but they can't be here because we're in a slide. I tell my students, I want your hips to be more like this, like a 45 degree angle, right? Because the spine can twist, but your legs can't twist around each other. This is achievable. And then I want your upper body to be like this. This is more achievable. Your feet are going this direction. Your hips are going this direction. And then you move that last little 30 degrees here with just the upper body, and then you can actually have, the laser pointing towards the box. When we ask our members to move their bodies flat to the box in a slide with just the hips, what ends up happening is that the feet start looking like this. Instead of, if this is your left foot and this is your right foot, and you're trying to get your hips like here, you start looking like this. This is your left foot and this is your right foot, and your hips are here because this is the only way you would be able to get them like that. And then when you move forward, your feet are like having to cross over each other awkwardly in order to have your hips be aligned. Hopefully that made sense. It was just 3 of the things that I wanted to talk about that I see educators miss and students misunderstand. It's caused from a level of miscommunication in how we are teaching the technique, and then misinterpretation by the students because they don't know what you're looking for. And I think it's very educational. Please, I urge you to show your students this, or at least show your staff this, so that we can correct saying things in an incorrect manner that leads to misinterpretation. Hopefully this helped. I'll see you all in the next video. Enjoy.